Okay, cool. I'll start with the next segment there, which is about multi-day racing. So the multi-day racing, um, yeah. So when we say multi-day racing, the thing is that Deccan Cliffhanger, for example, is a non-stop race. It's called a non-stop race in the ultra cycling world because you have basically a little over 24 hours, 30 hours or so to finish this race. At the most, you're stretching it a little bit more than that, but it's a non-stop little one-day race. When I talk about multi-day races, I'm talking about races which go on for 2 days or more. So, for example, Ultra Spice is one of those in which you have distances of 1200 and 1750 kilometers, and you're on the road for 3 to 4 days. So, the reason to create the Ultra Spice race in India was that after Deccan Cliffhanger and between RAM, which is 5,000 kilometers and 12 days, we needed to have some kind of a stepping stone for people to learn how to be on the road with not just the racers but even the crew, how to be on the road, how to repeat your 24-hour routine, and how to continue to repeat it day after day without getting fatigued, or at least set it up in a way in which you can execute this race properly and safely. So that's the reason why we did the Ultra Spice race. Also because the route is just gorgeous. But basically, one of the reasons was to give people an opportunity to learn how to race day after day, and a whole new bunch of things happens when you do that. Um, so timings and things are given over here, but I won't get into that. This slide I think we've gone through many times. I'm not going to go over it again, but basically it's important to remember that you do all your work before you reach the start line, and if you've set up things and planned it properly, then your work during race reduces and you don't waste your race time. Because just remember that in all these races, the once the clock starts at the start line, the clock doesn't stop until you finish. So you can waste as much time as you want, but the clock is ticking away. So any little slip up, any need to where you forget or you don't haven't planned properly, it's going to waste your race time. So remember that race time during race is like a currency, so you've got to be really efficient with it. So one of the rules that changes when you're doing multi-day races is that you have to have more than one support vehicle, and these support vehicles, at least one of these support vehicles has to be with the racer at all times. In the multi-day race, if you have a minimum of two support vehicles, one has to be with the racer, but the other one has to provide, the crew in that other one has to get their rest. So you have to plan what are called crew rotations. So crew rotations. So when we talked about relay teams, for example, we did rotations of the racers. Now what we're talking about is doing rotations of your crew members. So the crew members will be on duty with the racer for a certain number of hours of the day, and then they go off duty. Off duty means now they are not servicing the racer, so to speak, but they go away to rest, maybe wash up, maybe uh, you know get some food, etc. And this makes the biggest difference between a non-stop race like DC and multi-day race. Now in DC also, some people, a lot of racers do get more than one crew, because then your crew stays fresh. Very frankly, 30 hours at a race like DC is exhausting. Even racers like Kabir and Chaitanya, who have done DC in 24, 25 hours, the crew, they come with two crew cars, and without two crew cars it would be very, very difficult, very tiring for the crew to be able to stay with the racer for so long. It is tiring. So two support vehicles is good even in DC, except that everybody is going to finish in 24 hours, so we don't have any mandatory rules of crew going away for resting. In a multi-day race, however, we insist on that. So I'll just come to that in a little while. So in what you have to remember when you're planning out your support vehicle rotation is that in the daylight hours, the support can be leapfrog, but in the night time, it's mandatory that you have to have direct follow. So keep this in mind that whatever crew is going to be with your racer in the night, that vehicle has to be in direct follow with the racer. Why this makes a difference is that when you are only one vehicle with your racer during the night time and you have to be in direct follow, all kinds of things come into play. You can't stop for anything. You can't stop to, unless your racer is stopping. You don't stop for anything. You don't stop to take a pee. You don't stop for whatever. So make sure that whoever's in the direct follow is going to be comfortable with this kind of discomfort with being awake the whole time. Leapfrog comes, leapfrog means that the crew vehicle can go ahead, the crew can go run to the toilet, pick up food, those kind of things. But in the night time, the direct follow crew can't do that. Sorry. Yeah. So we continue with the rules in the 1200 and 1750-kilometer race. 2 support vehicles with a minimum of 2, again, 2 licensed drivers, okay, in each vehicle. This is mandatory for all solos and teams. Very frankly, this is a bare minimum. A third crew member is, essential, I would say, not even recommended, but is essential to look after the racer's needs in each vehicle. So the 2 support vehicles are required for safety reasons. The reason why I've written all this is because I've had requests from people who have been used to doing Deccan Cliffhanger saying, oh, can't we just do it with one team? It's so expensive to get another support vehicle. So we have to make this in the rules that, yeah, we had to put this in the rules that no, you have to have 2, and you have to, the reason to do this is to allow support crew to take turns being on active duty for the racer, because when you're with your racer on active duty, it is really tiring. And my recommendation is not to let your crew be on active duty for more than 10 to 11 hours. Even 12 hours is pushing it, but okay, you can do that. And after that, they need to retire. So if they get 10 to 11 hours off, and remember one thing, that they have to catch up, they have to drive ahead and catch up with the racer who is moving ahead on the race as well. So if a set of crew is off duty for about 10 to 11 hours, that means 4 hours is going to be spent driving anyway. So somebody is still, it's just called off duty for the sake of differentiating it from active duty, but they're still really doing work. It's not like they have 11 hours off time. They still have to drive, they still have to wash up, maybe collect food, sometimes even cook. So keep this in mind and be kind to your crew when you do this planning. Both vehicles must be there for the entire duration of the race. So both the vehicles have to be around. At the most, we allow one vehicle to catch up halfway through the first day. No set of crew can be on active follow duty for longer than 15 hours. We've still stretched it a bit and said 15 hours at the max one crew can be on active duty. But like I said, I don't recommend more than 10 to 12 hours max. And of course, we always put in our rule that if you want to stretch it to 15 hours, go ahead and do that. But then if we find your crew unable to perform, if they're sleepy or anything, we exercise the rule to apply the rule number 10B related to sleep. So just to, what are the crew roles within the vehicle? So I think I've done this before. So there's one, basically these are the 3 things which are going on in any vehicle which is on active duty with a racer. You have one person driving, the person in the navigator seat is essentially navigating, but also simultaneously keeping an eye on the racer, communicating with the racer, communicating with the race officials, perhaps, control point details every time you pass a control point or any other task, and even communicating with the other vehicle if required. And then the third person, basic role is rider care, and that involves the rider care person is in charge of ensuring that the racer is hydrated and well fed, and has to also keep track of what is the nutrition, etc., that the racer is taking or not taking during this time, and get it ready. Food prep might be involved, preparing some your shakes might be involved, protein shake, etc. So the crew may rotate. Which person in the crew is doing each of these roles can change. So one person may be driving for the first few hours and then maybe in the navigator role or doing rider care. This really depends on what they are comfortable with. Sometimes some people just want to do the driving and they're happy to drive the whole distance. Sometimes you have somebody who's doing rider care who may be a young person who can't drive or navigate. And then that person's job is solely to look after the racer. So the crew can rotate who is doing each of these, and these over here within these three roles, you can also have somebody who does massage. You can have your bike technician in there. You can have somebody who's handling media and camera work also. You can have somebody doing cooking or so there'll be other jobs. These are not the only tasks that are involved, but these are the main three roles within the crew. So now, when you have more than one um, support vehicle, you have now just imagine that you have the racer and there is a vehicle following that racer, carrying everything that the racer needs, which includes all everything that their bicycle needs, for example, lights, their garment, their charging things, a change of clothes, all their food, everything that the racer is going to need during the race. And then this is in the vehicle behind them. Now, when you have crew shift is changing. Generally, in my experience, what I used recommended was that the vehicle doesn't change, only the people change in and out of the vehicle. So you have the crew A, your crew team A, which consists of three people who are in the follow vehicle with the racer. And then in the evening time, the new crew comes in another vehicle, which is your off duty vehicle. So they come in that vehicle, and then the crew people shift vehicles. So even during this, so that you don't have to shift all the racers' saman from one car to the other, that stuff remains in the follow vehicle only, and only the people get in and out. But even when these people are getting in and out, the crew is coming in and out of this follow vehicle, they still have a lot of stuff to take out. Sometimes on multi-day races, what you'll have is if you're going to a hotel or something for the night, you will want to take some things for charging. You will want to take washing clothes, racers' clothes for washing. Maybe there'll be some food prep items that or dirty vessels that need to be taken away, bottles that need to be washed. And then you have the new team which is coming in with food, coming in with other things. So one thing that you need to remember is that during this shuffle, a lot of work goes on. So prepare lists and things to do this in a proper way. And bear in mind what I said earlier, that the racer, while one team is off duty, the racer may be covering 180 to 200 kilometers. And so the resting crew also has to spend 4 5 hours driving to catch up with the racer who is now gone ahead by that much. So what you have to do is to plan your meetups for depending on what time or how you've scheduled your crew shift. You have to plan out where you're going to meet, make sure that you've got everything that you need when you make that change. Meet up over there and learn to do this quickly without wasting too much time. Because if you're doing a shift during the daytime, maybe the racer can keep cycling. But if you're doing it during the night time, if you have a third car which is also there, can the racer keep going, and the two cars do this shifting. But if you don't have that, then you've got to really be efficient in doing this, and maybe you can service your racer, or the racer can take a little break while you're doing this work. Yeah. um yeah. This is a video from one of our transitions which we made during Race Across America at a time station called Durango. I'll just roughly just look at what all is going on. There's an ice bucket and some food and stuff is being taken out, personal belongings, clothes washing, I think, is being taken out or brought in. This was a team, of course. And then we have the RV here with with the bicycles. So, you've got to make sure that, so something that actually happened, oops, sorry. something that actually happened in this particular race of mine was that um, one of the racers' bikes was sent on the RV, and the RV went on a road which didn't meet us up for some. So, it was a mistake, obviously, by some crew member who put the bicycle in the RV. The RV is a recreational vehicle, which is the big, sleeping vehicle, which in some sections of Race Across America is not allowed on the same route as the racers. So the bicycle should never have gone into the RV. It was a mistake that the bicycle was put in the RV, not on the bike rack, the follow vehicle. We had too many vehicles and too many crew on this one. It was such an inefficient race. But anyway, um, yeah. So you have checklists for all these things. You can just create all these. I'll show you something else afterwards. So these are some of the ways in which to make the plan. So the important thing to remember when you do multi-day racing is to make plans which are the humans are basically designed for a 24-hour cycle, and if you upset that too much, people are going to become uncomfortable and they're going to become dysfunctional. So the closest you are to a 24-hour cycle. So what you have to remember that in any case, your sleep, transition, comfort is all gone for the crew. The crew is going to be sitting in a car with strange people running around whole day, hardly getting any sleep. So there's a huge level of discomfort which you cannot avoid. That is just you. It's a given. It's going to be there. Crew should not join you for your race if they're not prepared to be so uncomfortable. But now within those parameters of discomfort, what you want to do is keep them functional. And one of the best ways to do that is to ensure that you fall into a 24-hour cycle, which you repeat day after day. So the sooner you fall into this cycle of when your shifts happen, when your transitions happen, the easier it is for you to repeat them smoothly day after day for a race. So in the case of race around Austria, Rise Race around Austria, this was one of the sample plans I made for the 1500-kilometer race, where we had two vehicles and two sets of crew. So here you can sort of see we have the start over here, and the duration of the first shift is 12 hours, where the rider is expected to ride around 215 kilometers. The first crew is getting some rest, doing errands, picking up supplies, and the second crew is the one which is following the racer. Then we meet up for a night transition in which the crew is switching. And for the night transition, we've given a 30-minute buffer time so that the rider can also get some rest and food and things. This is happening in the middle of the night at 3:30 a.m. or p.m. After that, we have another 12-hour shift. Another 215 kilometers are expected to be covered. And during this time now, it is the first crew which is in follow. Where's my cursor gone? Yeah, the first crew is in the follow, and the other one is getting some rest and doing some errands like shopping and stuff like that for supplies. So once we fell into this pattern, and this time we kept a 1 hour nap time for the racer during the day. This thing, I think this was one of the racers who preferred to have. No, this was day two. So little bit changes were there. This was day two, where we only had a small nap in the afternoon. And we decided that the night transition would be where we start the 24-hour routine of giving him a 2.5 hour nap break. So now when we did the night shift, we did it with a nap of 2.5 hours after only 10 and a half hours of riding. So the first two shifts you can see were 12 hours each. After that, we did a 10.5 hour shift, where 2.5 hours then was spent taking a nap, then again another 10.5 hours. So, I mean, this is just one of the sample ways in which to create it. But these are the things that you have to keep in mind, and then you just repeat it. So after day three's routine is then just being repeated, so that there's a comfort zone for people. This was a raw two-person team, a 2,200-kilometer event, and we had one follow vehicle and one RV, and we had two sets of primary crew, and then we had an RV driver. So the RV driver never changed. He was permanently, he was in charge of the recreational vehicle all the time. And he was the one who drove the resting crew up so we could sleep in the RV while he drove. And then we would switch over and the new crew would get in, and then he would get some break first on and off, and then he would drive or somebody else would drive up. And we had two crews led by myself and Chai. And so then we figured out, what are the distances going to be covered in how many hours. Then accordingly, what is the meetup point? I think I did this in the relay team, this thing. Sorry. Yeah. Is there anything else? So the plan needs to account for the duration of the race, the terrain that we're covering, crew roles, crew size, and the number and the kinds of vehicles that are being used. Yeah. So if you notice a small thing that I will show you here is that the distance that we are covering changed depending on the terrain that we were going to cover. So in the beginning, the 8-hour segments were covering 196 kilometers. They're expected to cover 196 kilometers in each 8-hour segment. Later on, that reduces because these were climbing segments. So this was calculated based on the actual fatigue level, terrain, all these things, and then we fine-tuned where we would meet depending on that. Then this is a sample plan from somebody else's, some other solo racer. I think he's one of the ones who have written a book. I'll show you these books in a bit. So, this is the detailed plan in which, so there's one of the things I wanted to show you is there are multiple ways in which to use Excel to derive your plans. And there are multiple ways in which you can create it, depends on what suits you. And this racer actually did a lot of fine tuning so that if you see this third line here, 5 represents a 5-minute break and 60 represents a 60-minute break. So they actually did rehearsals of doing 5-minute breaks because what this rider was not particularly fast. And what they figured is that off saddle time was what would cost them tremendously if they didn't be efficient on that. So they practiced at home before the race. They practiced how to do 5-minute breaks, like a F1 Formula One type crew, pit stop sort of a mode of how he comes to a break and X, Y, Z, people do whatever they have to do. And then he moves within 5 minutes, no waste of time. And I think they stuck with it. Okay. Is that it? Yeah. Right.